Chapter 2095, Day of Sacrificial Rites. Chapter 2095, Day of Sacrificial Rites. Old Ma hesitated for a moment, then continued, Many years ago, cultivators from all kinds of places swarmed into the village. Four Corner Village might no longer exist if not for the Master's protection. Even so, the villagers couldn't stay in this bubble forever. Many people are eager to go out and see the outside world. Four Corner Village attracted the attention of the world since its reputation has spread around. All the top forces in the Shangqing domain have their eyes on us. We may keep them from going in, but we can't stop every villager from leaving the village. Even though that powerful person established rules to protect Four Corner Village, he couldn't forbid outsiders from fighting with villagers who had already left the village. If that's the case, everyone from Four Corner Village would act without scruples and offend with impunity. Therefore, some things are bound to happen. Most people didn't want to be trapped in this small village forever, especially those who knew how to cultivate. Otherwise, why did they bother to cultivate in the first place? As a result, the village and the outside slowly reached some tacit understanding and built an alliance. Four Corner Village allows the outsiders to come and visit, but they also need to provide help to the villagers. For instance, many people who left the village may be supported, looked after, or even invited by outside forces. The unfortunate experience of Tai Tu's father is only an anomaly. Yi Futian nodded slightly. He understood the situation a little bit better now. People living in this world sometimes had no command over things that happened to them. Tragedies may befall someone simply because of the treasure he possessed and the jealousy it caused. Unless Four Corner Village was completely hedged off from the outer world and all the villagers never left home, they could hardly forbid every outsider from stepping foot in the village. No one would be able to leave and survive in the outer world if Four Corner Village offended all the top forces in the Shangqing domain. Just like what Old Ma said, the villagers might be more likely to feel satisfied with the size of the village if they were all common folks. Nevertheless, Four Corner Village was a magical place that produced several cultivators with extraordinary talents. The village was too small for them. How could they be trapped here forever? It was only natural for them to long for entering the outer world. You know why people from the outer realms all come to the village at this particular time, right? Old Ma turned to Yi Futian and asked. I don't know. Yi Futian shook his head. Lost for words, Old Ma darted Yi Futian a glance. How did this guy come here without knowing anything? Why didn't the people who sent him here give him some information about Four Corner Village? Because the day of sacrificial rites of Four Corner Village is coming. The village has a day of sacrificial rites every 4 years. On that day, the ancestors of Four Corner Village will manifest and perform divine miracles. The village will become another world. The day of sacrificial rites technically lasts for 7 days, and it's an important opportunity for the village. Some people will be lustrated or gain inheritance or awakening on that day. That's why it's crucial for us. Old Ma continued to explain, every 4 years, many people from the outer realms will come to the village right before the day of sacrificial rites. All of them are influential cultivators. Some villagers can have the chances to invite them to participate in the day of sacrificial rites. Many common folks in the village rarely get to lay hold of any cultivation opportunity. Their collaboration with the outsiders can be mutually beneficial. If that's the case, by inviting me to be your guest, you guaranteed me a chance to participate in the day of sacrificial rites? Yi Futian asked. Yes, that's basically it, Old Ma nodded and said. Therefore, the villagers all want to pick disciples and offsprings of influential families in the outer realms who have fortunes and resources. The same goes for the outsiders. They want to be hosted by the most prosperous families in the village. Having children studying in the private school is a good indicator of the family's status. They have a better chance to succeed on the day of sacrificial rites. Old Ma added, besides, the outsiders also want to rope the influential families in by allying with them. So the members of those families will join those forces after they left the village. Yi Futian nodded slightly and had a better understanding. It seemed like Four Corner Village really was a place of miracles. Otherwise, the top forces in the Shangqing domain wouldn't pay so much attention to it. What kind of opportunity do you want? Yi Futian asked old Ma. I don't want anything for myself. I hope to see if little Ling can have better luck. Old Ma turned around and shot a glance at little Ling, who was hanging out with Xia Qingyuan behind them. Yi Futian wondered if old Ma wanted little Ling to become a cultivator as well. The day of sacrificial rites might change the destinies of the villagers for real. When is the day of sacrificial rites? Yi Futian asked. It's almost here. It doesn't have an exact date. We will all know when the day comes, old Ma replied. Yi Futian didn't know what to say. Four Corner Village was an interesting place indeed. Even its day of sacrificial rites didn't have an exact date. The villagers only knew the day was here when it already happened. Yi Futian was also very curious to see what kind of a world Four Corner Village would become on that day. Yi Futian started to feel less anxious now that he had learned about the backstory. The village was a mysterious place, but it would reveal itself in time. All he needed to do at this time was to wait quietly and patiently. Old Ma, you seem to be in a chatty mood. Someone walked past them on the stone-paved street not far away. He turned back to look at Yi Futian and old Ma, who were sitting in the front yard, and spoke to them with a smile. People in the village all know what you want. But what's wrong with staying here? So you can't cultivate, so what? Why do you have to be so stubborn? You shouldn't think about it too much. While speaking, he shot a look at Yi Futian and cracked a pleasant smile. This man was old Ma's friend. He often chatted with old Ma and knew his thoughts well. Back in the day, old Ma's son and daughter-in-law died because of cultivation. Now old Ma wanted his granddaughter to become a cultivator as well. I know, old Ma grinned and replied. Even though you have the determination, you could be wasting your chance by selecting such a random person. All of your efforts will come to naught. Old Ma, you should go ask around what kind of people other families invited, someone else said. Nonetheless, this one's taunting comments were obviously less friendly. Everyone in the village was different. Old Ma smiled and nodded without responding. At this point, a young man walked over to them. Yi Futian recognized that he was Fang Xiun, who they had encountered on the way. Fang Xiun came from an influential family that enjoyed a high status in Four Corner Village. Fang Xiun surveyed old Ma and Yi Futian before speaking. Old Ma, my grandpa asked if you want to pay a visit to our house, along with him. He pointed at Yi Futian. You can go back to tell your grandpa that it's not necessary. Old Ma shook his head and replied. All right, Fang Xiun nodded and darted Yi Futian an odd look. He turned his nose up at Yi Futian before. It was said that no one wanted Yi Futian when he first came to the village. Only old Ma was stupid enough to pick him. However, Fang Xiuan's family seemed to have a different view and even asked him to come and invite old Ma and Yi Futian over. Much to Fang Xiuan's surprise, they turned him down. Fang Xiuan was a little embarrassed. He turned around and left immediately. I will go to have some rest inside. Suit yourself. Old Ma stood up and said to Yi Futian. Then he walked into the room. Yi Futian still lounged in the chair quietly. Little Ling went to hold old Ma's arm to help him walk. Xia Qingyuan sat down next to Yi Futian and glanced at him. Then she also lay back in the chair and said to Yi Futian, we haven't been so relaxed for a long time. Yes, Yi Futian smiled and nodded. Doesn't it feel good? Xia Qingyuan took a brief look at Yi Futian. There wasn't much she wanted in life. She was happy to stay in a village like this with Yi Futian for life. Every day was carefree, without worries or conflicts. Yi Futian noticed that Xia Qingyuan was gazing at him. He smiled and said, even a retreat like this is still plagued by sordid affairs. Xia Qingyuan didn't respond. During the following days, Yi Futian and the others had been enjoying the peace and quiet. They occasionally took a walk inside the village and had become familiar with the people and the layout. Yi Futian actually wanted to pay a visit to the master in the private school. But he dropped the idea since he didn't have a good excuse. A recluse like that would certainly come to him if he wanted to meet him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2096, Ancient Divine Nation. Chapter 2096, Ancient divine nation days passed. Although there would occasionally be conflicts in the small village, overall, it was still peaceful. It was rare for there to be large disturbances. The people who were supposed to arrive from the outside world had already entered the village. They had all received invitations from the villagers. After all, those who could enter the village were all people with good fate. When the day of sacrificial rites came, the villagers also needed to rely on and form alliances with people of powerful fates. For those who were famous in the outside world and had powerful fates, they found companions among the cultivators who studied in the private school. When both parties had powerful fates, they would likely obtain benefits when the day of sacrificial rites came. On this day, the night was dark and the village was sleeping soundly. The entire Sifang village was peaceful, and many of its inhabitants had wandered into dreamland. Those who weren't sleeping were cultivating. Right then, beams of bright light suddenly lit up Four Corner Village. A mysterious aura emanated outwards and descended upon the village, enveloping the entire village within it. Gradually, the entire village was lit, appearing golden in color. Futian suddenly opened his eyes. He looked out the window and then got up and went outside. He sensed that the entire courtyard was enveloped in a mysterious aura. The village suddenly lit up with brilliant light. Countless lights danced before his eyes. The scenery was constantly changing. At that moment, people walked up beside Futian one by one, including Old Ma and Little Ling. Old Ma watched the scenery change before him. There was a look of longing in his eyes. He was holding on to the hands of a little girl. It was Little Ling. "It is so miraculous," Beigong Shuang exclaimed in a low voice. The scene before her kept changing. It was as though they were in an overlapping space and were entering another world. The day of sacrificial rites is about to begin. The spirits of the ancestors will appear, and then all of you will appear in their world. There, you will all be able to obtain fateful encounters. "Little Yi, I'll leave Ling to you," Old Ma said to Futian. The day of sacrificial rites was a significant event for Four Corner Village. Not only outsiders attached importance to it, the villagers did so too. Each generation would only have one such opportunity. Anyone who experienced the day of sacrificial rites would not be able to do so a second time. This applied to both villagers and outsiders. The villagers would usually choose the youths among the next generation to experience it. This was the most suitable age. However, since they themselves had experienced it before and no longer had the chance to do so, cooperating with outsiders was a good choice. Hence, Old Ma handed Little Ling over to Futian, asking him to take care of her. Futian naturally understood. Old Ma hoped that he could let Little Ling obtain a fateful encounter. Little Ling would also only have this one chance to do so. Hence, when Old Ma chose Futian, many of the villagers were critical of his decision. They even mocked Old Ma, saying that he chose Futian because he had no other option. "Leave her to me," replied Futian as he nodded his head. If they truly managed to find a fateful encounter, he would naturally do his best to look after Little Ling. With his most recent understanding, the day of sacrificial rites was the only opportunity for the village youths to change their fates. Incredible figures had the chance to become even more suitable for cultivation, while those who had yet to awaken to their talents had the hope of doing so. Rumor has it that the village's legendary 7 major divine techniques came from the day of sacrificial rites and could be obtained from within. To this day, 2 of the 7 divine techniques had yet to appear. Back then, Little Ling's parents lost their lives due to not being able to cultivate. This might be one of Old Ma's regrets. Everything before Futian's eyes continued to change. Very soon, the village disappeared. Old Ma's silhouette also gradually became blurry and vanished. It was indeed miraculous for someone just a few feet away to disappear from their view. When everything cleared up, they were still standing where they were. However, they were no longer in the courtyard but instead had appeared in another world. Here, divine halos shone down from the sky. The place oozed with divinity. Gazing into the distance, they seemed to make out a magnificent divine nation. A divine palace floated high in the sky. "Is this the ancient divine nation?" Futian mumbled to himself. "It is so beautiful," said Little Ling as she looked out into the distance. Yi Futian looked at little Ling beside him. She could also see it. Old Ma said that upon entering this realm, different people would be able to see different things. Some people would be able to see fateful encounters, while others wouldn't be able to do so. Was this an illusory world? In the distance, silhouettes were traversing through the sky, heading towards the divine region far away. Yi Futian held little Ling's hand as his figure rose into the sky. Nearby, some people glanced over in their direction. Muyun Shu was also among the crowd. There was a youth with extraordinary temperament beside him who should be his ally. Elder brother Tai Tu. Little Ling shouted beside Yi Futian. He turned his head around and looked down below. A figure was frenziedly running barefoot on the ground. This figure was a youth. It was Tai Tu. He had actually come here alone without a companion. It seemed that he was the only person without a companion. He was running around frenziedly alone down below. Little Ling. The youth greeted little Ling as he raised his head and greeted her back. He appeared to be a simpleton. Yi Futian's figure floated down until he stood before Tai Tu. He asked, "Are you here alone?" Tai Tu replied as he nodded his head. "Father said that I can still obtain fateful encounters alone." Yi Futian recalled old Ma's story. Blind Tai himself did not trust outsiders at all. He also did not want to ally with anyone. Hence, he would rather Tai Tu experience the day of sacrificial rites alone. "Come with us then," Yi Futian invited. Tai Tu scratched his head hesitantly. "Elder brother Tai Tu, come with me and Uncle Yi. Uncle Yi will look after you," said little Ling in her tender voice. Tai Tu nodded his head with a silly smile on his face. He looked at Yi Futian and said, "Many thanks, Uncle Yi." "Let's go," said Yi Futian as he carried the two of them and traversed the sky together, heading straight ahead. In the sky of this world, beams of golden light descended from above. They appeared dazzling. The further they advanced, the more brilliant the golden light appeared. It seemed to be radiating from the divine nation. "What is that?" At that moment, Yi Futian asked his group as he looked ahead. Over there, he saw two large armies engaging in a fierce battle in the sky above. However, no aura emanated from their battle. That meant that it was an illusion and was not real. It might be that it was just an image that once existed in this world. "Uncle Yi, what are you talking about?" Little Ling asked beside Yi Futian as she looked at him with her innocent eyes. Yi Futian looked at her and asked, "Can't you see it?" Little Ling shook her head. Beside them, the gazes of Xia Qingyuan and the others landed on Yi Futian. They had somewhat strange looks. This made Yi Futian understand. It seemed that he was the only person who could see this scene. "All of you can't see it?" Yi Futian asked in a low voice. They shook their heads. For them, there was nothing ahead. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2097. Disgust. Chapter 2097. Disgust. Yi Futian looked back at the battlefield when he saw the group shaking their heads. It was a battle between two very terrifying armies. Although he could not sense their auras, from just the image, he could faintly make out how intense the battle was. This made Yi Futian realize that different people would actually see different things here in this world. It might be that there was truly an element of fate. Did this mean that his fate was more powerful than that of the people around him? "Let's go," said Yi Futian without stopping as he continued to advance. They seemed to have arrived at the palace of the divine nation. It was grand here. When Yi Futian saw this, he could imagine how prosperous this place was in the past. From the looks of it, the rumors about Four Corner Village were very likely true. In the past, Four Corner Village was once a divine nation. "Uncle Yi." At that moment, Tai Tu said this as he looked up ahead. He seemed to be hinting for Yi Futian to head over there. Yi Futian also looked over in the direction Tai Tu was looking at. There was a flight of stairs. At the top of the stairs was a large group of cultivators. They appeared to be a large army. They were ascending the stairs. He did not know how many cultivators there were, but at the very top, Yi Futian saw a blurry figure. It did not seem real, appearing like faint currents that formed a human shape. However, when Yi Futian wanted to get a clearer look at it, it would appear even blurrier. Can anyone make out what is over there? Yi Futian asked Xia Qingyuan and the others who were beside him. Xia Qingyuan and the others shook their heads with perplexed looks. It was the same as before. Could it be that in this world, Yi Futian could see much more than they could? I can see it, Tai Tu said. There is a giant over there. He looks so majestic. The hammer is so big. How heavy is it? When Yi Futian heard Tai Tu's words, he revealed a strange expression. Tai Tu could actually see it. He had heard stories from old Ma regarding blind Tai. Tai Tu might have inherited blind Tai's talent and awakened some abilities. Hence, it was possible that he had formed resonance with this place. This might be Tai Tu's fateful encounter. Let's head over, Yi Futian said, bringing Tai Tu along. When he advanced and reached the area, Yi Futian suddenly sensed an extremely majestic power. The power became a formless wave that caused his body to tremble. It actually caused his figure to be pushed backward. Xia Qingyuan and others turned around and looked at Yi Futian. They had no reaction to this power because they could not see the scene before them at all. It is indeed miraculous, exclaimed Yi Futian, somewhat curious. Tai Tu let go of Yi Futian's hand and walked ahead alone. Yi Futian saw Tai Tu step onto the stairs and walk up. Then he stood before the illusory figure. Yi Futian looked at Tai Tu. He now had an even deeper understanding of what Old Ma had said. The master of this world was the first ancestor of Four Corner Village. This place was originally left behind for them. As an outsider, Yi Futian seemed to be repelled by some force. On the other hand, Tai Tu could see the place and walk straight up to it. Was this an ancestor passing down his teachings to his descendant? When Tai Tu stood there, beams of dazzling divine light circled around him. He himself did not feel anything as he raised his head and looked around. However, Tai Tu soon sensed that something was different. The illusory figure seemed to take shape. The divine light that circled around the figure immediately entered into Tai Tu's body. Then, his figure suddenly trembled violently. Tai Tu grabbed his head with his hands and let out a painful cry. "Elder brother Tai Tu," called out little Ling. She felt afraid when she saw Tai Tu shouting in pain. She wanted to step forward, but Yi Futian still held on to her hand. He said, "He is all right. He should be inheriting some of the ancestors' teachings." Replied little Ling as she nodded her head. Yet she still looked straight ahead somewhat anxiously. At that moment, an extraordinary power suddenly surged throughout the space. Countless beams of golden divine light seemed to descend upon the place where Tai Tu stood. Yi Futian could faintly make out countless figures merging to form a gigantic silhouette who stood tall in the sky. Based on what Old Ma said, the Sifang God seat had 7 major lord protectors. This should be one of them. Tai Tu would be inheriting his abilities. Even more powerful divine light immediately descended. This caused a unique power to emanate in the space. Tai Tu was enveloped in the divine light. A crisp sound kept coming from his body, as though the bones, muscles and blood vessels in his body were undergoing metamorphoses. From far away, people were heading in this direction, looking towards where Tai Tu stood. From one direction, Muyun Shu and his group had arrived. Muyun Shu stared at Tai Tu. Although Muyun Shu was still young, he acted more mature than his age. His gaze was cold as he looked at Tai Tu. Tai Tu had actually obtained a fateful encounter. That meant that Tai Tu was experiencing an awakening. Muyun Shu's figure advanced. He actually dashed towards where Tai Tu stood. However, just like Yi Futian, as he was doing so, a formless power actually sent Muyun Shu's figure flying outwards as he tried to approach Tai Tu. Muyun Shu stabilized himself as he glared at Tai Tu. He also could not make out clearly what was happening around Tai Tu. He could only see Tai Tu being surrounded by divine light. He knew that Tai Tu had obtained a fateful encounter. This power was actually hindering him, not allowing him to approach Tai Tu. "Stop him," Muyun Shu ordered the people beside him. His behavior caused Yi Futian to scowl. Muyun Shu was a well-known figure in Four Corner Village. He was a monstrous youth. Yet he actually acted so unreasonably. No matter how they put it, Tai Tu was from the same school as him. They all studied in the private school and were all members of the village. Muyun-shu should feel happy for Tai too for awakening to a great power. They were both locals here. It was naturally a joyful occasion for them to be able to inherit more divine teachings from their ancestors. However, Muyun-shu didn't think so. He was very egoistic even though he was still young. He did everything as he pleased. Both of you are locals of Four Corner Village. Since now you pose a chance of encountering fateful encounters at this place, then go your own way. You should each mind your own business and not interfere with each other, Yi Futian said to Muyun-shu. His tone was cold. This youth was acting presumptuously. Are you criticizing me? Muyun-shu fixed his gaze on Yi Futian. A cold light flickered in the eyes of this arrogant youth. He seemed to be looking down on Yi Futian. Get out of my way, ordered Muyun-shu as he glared at Yi Futian, who was blocking his way. Yi Futian was similarly staring at the other party. Even though Yi Futian didn't like Muyun-shu's personality, he took into consideration that Muyun-shu was just a youth and they were in his village now. Yi Futian was not interested in getting serious with Muyun-shu, but the latter acted even more insolently. Get lost, Yi Futian spat. He could not take it anymore. He looked at Muyun-shu with a look of disgust. Yi Futian had cultivated for many years and had encountered many villains. However, this was the first time he had met such a despicable junior in his early teens. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2098, Vicious? Chapter 2098, Vicious. Muyun-shu stared at Yi Futian. Did he just tell him to get out of here? In the village, no one dared to speak to him in this manner. Several cultivators next to Muyun-shu gave Yi Futian a cold stare. They had heard some people mentioning Yi Futian and his group in the village. They heard that he came to the village with Lu Qixing and the others, but no one paid much attention to them at all. Later, they were invited by an ordinary citizen in the village as guests, hence their presence here. For some cultivators from Donghua domain to come onto their turf, and in Four Corner Village, no less, to be this blatantly disrespectful was unthinkable. They came from the outside world to the third heaven of Shangqing domain. Nanhai family in the Shangqing domain was known by all cultivators in the domain. Anyone who heard its name knew what it represented. The distribution of the top forces in the Shangqing domain was kind of special and completely different from that of the Donghua domain. The giants of the Donghua domain were positioned in major areas, while all the giants of the Shangqing domain were concentrated in the central area of the domain, which was also known as the group of continents called the Upper Nine Heavens. Upper Nine Heavens was the absolute core of the Shangqing domain. Almost all the giants and top figures were cultivating in this continental group. Among them, the upper third heaven was a symbol of a powerful family. Anyone who cultivated in the upper third heaven would inevitably attract attention no matter where he went. Lu Qixing, who had entered the Four Corner Village previously, was from the Lu family in the three-layer heaven of Shangqing domain. His status was immensely prestigious, as Lu Qixing himself was a well-known figure. Nanhai family was also a principality from the Shangqing domain, located in the upper third heaven, almost at the pinnacle of this domain. Of course, when they arrived in Four Corner Village, the villagers did not care about their status in the outside world, and no one would care to mention it. But the reality was that the relationship between the Nanhai family and the Muyun family was an unusual one and far surpassed an alliance in the ordinary sense. Once, a peerless genius talent came out of Four Corner Village and swept countless talented figures aside. It was rare for him to be met with a worthy opponent, and he was heavily recruited by the top forces in the Shangqing domain. However, this man was extremely arrogant, and few could convince him, much less keeping him under their control. In the end, this peerless talent who came out of Four Corner Village was tamed by an exquisite beauty. She was equally stunning in looks and talent, and was a goddess from the Nanhai family. The two met because of a battle and came together because of their mutual appreciation of each other's talent. Together, they became a couple much envied by the world. Only later did this peerless figure learn that his beloved's family was a major force in the Shangqing domain, and she was a member of the Nanhai family in the third heavens. In the end, he became the son-in-law of the Nanhai family. A principality that stood at the top of the Shangqing domain had grabbed a once-in-a-lifetime genius as their son-in-law. These two great figures came together, and their story became a much-celebrated legend. Their union was sensational at the time, with all the top principalities from the Shangqing domain in attendance, with great fanfare. That peerless genius talent belonged to the Muyun family from Four Corner Village, Muyun Shu's elder brother, Muyun Lan. The Nanhai family knew that Muyun Lan had a younger brother cultivating in the private study inside Four Corner Village. He inherited the divine method of Four Corner Village and had been greatly valued. A few years ago, they sent someone to the village to train Muyun Shu systematically. The trainer himself was a powerful figure himself. Otherwise, he would not have been able to enter the village. It was apparent that they attached great importance to Muyun Shu. His elder brother, Muyun Lan, was a genius talent and his younger brother had equally great potential. Naturally, the Nanhai family would not pass over such an opportunity. In the future, these two peerless figures would rise from the Nanhai family to reinforce its status in the domain. If giants were able to be born from the Nanhai family, it would solidify the standing of that family that much stronger and enjoying many centuries in power. Muyun Shu had known that he was extraordinary ever since he could remember. Apart from having a teacher in the private study teaching him, everyone in the Nanhai family had given him the best resources for cultivating, thus spoiled him to become the arrogant personality he now exhibited. A young man next to Muyun Shu was named Nanhai Qing. This person was a favorite in the Nanhai family. He did not enter the village recently but had already been here for 3 years. The Nanhai family sent him to Four Corner Village as a trial to see what he could learn in Four Corner Village. Of course, the key was Muyun Shu's cultivation and his opportunity this time. Aside from the fact that ordinary folks could not physically enter Four Corner Village, those top forces would not yield any opportunities like this to them either. There were 2 other men behind Nanhai Qing who were powerful cultivators in the upper Renhuang realm. They weren't people with perfect great path, but when those of great luck entered the village, they could generally bring along some other people into the village with them. The fact that the Nanhai family would bring a few people inside was not surprising. In fact, every top force would have dispatched several representatives to the village. For that reason, the Fong family suspected Yi Futian's luck was formidable. If the people around him did not possess a perfect great path, it meant that they came in under his luck. If he could bring so many people in, his luck had to be extraordinary. Nanhai Qing had sensed the aura from Yi Futian and his group. He realized that at least 2 of them were cultivators with perfect great path. It seemed that these people were not ordinary and were top cultivators from the Donghua domain. Which force in the Donghua domain are you from? Don't you think you are overstepping your bounds? Nanhai Qing said to Yi Futian and the others. Where they were coming from was of little interest to him. This was Shangqing domain, and the Nanhai family had always been a force standing at its pinnacle. Clearly, they were not afraid of any force from the Donghua domain. That is none of your concerns, Yi Futian replied. You are too bold. The 2 Renhuang on either side took a step forward, and a powerful wave swept out towards Yi Futian and the others. Donghuang the Great had banned outsiders from fighting inside Four Corner Village, but they were allowed to fight on the day of sacrifice. This was an unwritten rule recognized by everyone inside the village, and Old Ma had informed Yi Futian as much. When the 2 Renhuang stepped out, they were like stormy waves sweeping toward Yi Futian and his people. This stormy wave contained the ultimate aura that was as sharp as a sword, extremely domineering, as if it was full of sword intent. Both of them were cultivators in the 8th realm. They were here to protect Nanhai Qing and Muyun Shu. Although they did not have the perfect great path, their realms were still terrifying, as they were almost at the peak of Renhuang. How dare you be so rude in Four Corner Village? Take them down and dispose of their cultivation, and drive them out of the village, Muyun Shu said coldly. Yi Futian detected a murderous intent on this teenage boy. It seemed that previously in the village he had suppressed his own temperament. Perhaps there were still some others in the village to whom he was beholden. Yi Futian thought it might be the teacher in the private study. If he were allowed to follow his nature without outside constraints, he would be a domineering and frightening dictator. He was already so vicious and ruthless at such a young age, talking about disposing the others of their cultivation at every turn, trying to prevent Tai Tu from obtaining his opportunity. Bagong Ao took a step forward and came to that cultivator of the 8th realm. An astonishing sound faintly rang out from his body, making this space full of oppression. Two storms of the Great Path collided in the void but didn't cause too great of a change in the power of the Great Path from the outside. It seemed that the rules and orders of the Great Path in this space were quite different. On the other side, Zifeng stepped out as an astonishing aura erupted from her body, and a magnificent divine flame of the Great Path appeared all around her. Radiant phantom shadows of the phoenix now appeared in the sky. Zifeng had followed Yi Futian in her cultivation, and Yi Futian had not deceived her either. He turned the divine fire of Wutong into a domain of divine flames that she could cultivate. Now Zifeng was already a demon emperor of the 6th order with perfect Great Path. Her aura was so astounding that even the cultivators of the 8th realm felt its pressure. Phoenix. Nan Haiqing cast a glance at Zifeng. It seemed that this group of people was not simple. He had already discovered 3 cultivators who possessed perfect Great Path, which could almost only be countered by master-level principalities. And it's a female phoenix, no less. I require a personal mount. How about you follow me and be my mount? Muyun Shu said after seeing Zifeng. His tone was as rude as ever. Buzz. A stream of scorching and violent flames swept out, heading towards Muyun Shu. However, an invisible storm blocked just in time, and in the next moment, Zifeng turned into a fire-colored afterimage and charged forward. A cultivator of the 8th realm in front of Muyun Shu waved his hand, and a sword field appeared. A meteor shower of swords fell everywhere. Every strand of the sword field contained the sharp power to tear the space. It was as if one sword strike could poke a person full of holes. On the other side, Bagong Ao was clashing with the other cultivator of the 8th realm. A violent air current shrouded this space. Nan Haiqing looked at Yi Futian and the others who were opposite of him. Although he was the only one on this side, he seemed full of confidence while his eyes showed his indifference. It was as if he had never viewed Yi Futian or anyone else with much importance. He had already sensed Yi Futian and the others' cultivation and determined that their realm could never pose a threat to him. Although there were several of them, they would not last even one round with him. Nan Haiqing was Ren Huang of the 6th realm, with perfect Great Path. He was already a figure at the peak of this realm. His combat power was extraordinary, and he could even make war with ordinary cultivators of the 9th realm. Most cultivators of 8th realm would not have much chance fighting against him. Yi Futian's aura was only Ren Huang of the 5th realm. No matter where he came from, he could never have a chance against him. However, he realized that Yi Futian was not looking at him but had his full attention on Muyun Shu. Then, he started walking towards Muyun Shu instead. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2099. Apology. Chapter 2099. Apology. Nan Haiqing was stunned when he saw Yi Futian was about to do. Was it possible for him to ignore his existence to this extent? Yi Futian continued forward as if to bypass him. He aimed at Muyun Shu. Coercion of the Great Path permeated from his body, suppressing this space instantly. Inside this area, it was difficult for anyone to move. There was an invisible pressure of the Great Path that made those within its reach feel as if they were being trapped underwater, suffocating. It wasn't easy to move even an inch. Obviously, Yi Futian, too, felt this power. The divine light flowed upon his body as he took a step forward as if the pressure of the Great Path was not enough to constrain him. Nan Haiqing wanted to do something, but a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. This man had a smile on his face and stood there, watching him silently. Nan Haiqing felt ill at ease. The man's speed was way too fast. It was so fast that he did not have the time to react before the man was already in front of him. In addition, 2 rays of light now shot out from this man's eyes. the dazzling light almost made him blind, and there was immense chaos that incapacitated his mind for a brief moment. Although he was able to break free in a second, Nan Haiqing's eyes were still full of dazzling light, so he was unable to look away and could only focus his attention and wait. At this moment, Nan Haiqing felt greatly threatened, and a sense of danger manifested immediately. He did not move, but his eyes fixed on the man in front of him. The way of light. Nan Haiqing had seen a lot and knew in an instant that the other was an expert in the way of light, which threatened him greatly. He dared not act rashly. He felt that as soon as he moved, the person in front of him would launch an attack against him. Moreover, this man's realm was comparable to his own, which shocked Nan Haiqing. Someone who possessed perfect great path and at the same level as him, and this man wasn't even the most central person in the group like Yi Futian. Nan Haiqing no longer held his opponent with even the slightest contempt. He was threatened by the man in front of him in an instant, and he could no longer care much about Yi Futian anymore. Of course, it was Qin Yi that appeared in front of him. Qin Yi was already powerful when he was at Donghua banquet last time. He had not squandered all these years and had been improving himself. And the progress he made was considerable. The appearance of Qin Yi tied up Nan Haiqing. A strange situation now presented itself. Yi Futian walked directly to Muyunshu with no interference, as no one was there to stop him. As long as Qin Yi was there, Nan Haiqing would not dare to make a move. Yi Futian got in front of Muyunshu and saw that his expression went through quite a change. Muyunshu glanced at Nan Haiqing and the others and cursed them silently. "I will help you by staying here with you," Yi Futian replied and turned to look in the direction of the battlefield. Muyunshu's expression changed. He realized that Yi Futian was serious. On this battlefield, those 3 pieces of useless garbage had no time to look after him. Nan Haiqing, who was said to be a man of great ability, was restrained by a young man so that he could not act. In the other 2 battles, their side did not have any advantage at all either. They saw what was happening on this side with Yi Futian, but they didn't worry about Muyunshu's safety. No matter how bold Yi Futian was, he wouldn't be so bold as to do anything to Muyunshu in Four Corner Village. Or he would not leave the village alive. "Sorry," Muyunshu spat out in a gloomy voice. Before, when he saw Tai Tu here, he just wanted to ruin his chance. But now, that seemed impossible. He didn't want to be tangled up with Yi Futian. He just wanted to go elsewhere to find his own opportunity. "I didn't feel the sincerity. You have to face Tai Tu and bow down 3 times. Yi Futian turned and looked at Tai Tu. Muyunshu clenched his fists as his eyes fixed upon Yi Futian. However, his expression returned to normal in an instant as he bowed down to Tai Tu, saying, "I'm sorry." 3 times in a row. Muyunshu actually bowed down and apologized 3 times. Then he looked at Yi Futian with a smile. Was that acceptable? Yi Futian looked at Muyunshu and felt a faint chill crawl down his spine. This young man gave him an ever more terrifying feeling. He would grow up to be an extremely narcissistic person. "Get out of here." Yi Futian retracted his aura, and Muyunshu immediately regained his freedom. He gave Yi Futian one deep parting look, then turned to leave, saying, "Let's go." From those eyes, Yi Futian could feel a murderous intent. However, knowing what he knew of this young man, he was not surprised at all. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2101, Reality and Illusion. Chapter 2101, Reality and Illusion. Muyunshu was on one side of the divine nation, while someone else was on the other side. There was another splendid picture on display over there. It seemed like a starry dimension where a godlike shadow manifested himself. He stood on the back of a giant divine ape from the starry sky of ancient times. Together, they conducted themselves in a stately and majestic manner, which made the godlike figure on the divine ape's back even more regal. He looked like the king of the starry sky. Yi Futian came to the realization that it was probably also one of the 7 Lord Protectors. Sure family in Four Corner Village inherited this technique. A young man from the Shi family was standing there right now. Out of the 7 divine techniques, 4 of them were in possession of 4 different families: Muyun family, Shi family, Gu family, and Tai family. In fact, Blind Tai was the only one in the Tai family who possessed the technique. The villagers had been treating him differently ever since he lost his vision and came back to the village. Many people believed that the Tai family would be replaced sooner or later. It all depended on whether Blind Tai's son, Tai Tu, was blessed with the technique. Even though some people might come by some other cultivation opportunities, no one outside of the 4 families was endowed with the divine techniques. Futian stood in place and quietly watched everything, pondering what kind of power brought this world into being. He released wisps of energy from his body, and his eyes started to glow with eerie divine light as if he was trying to see through this world. At this moment, the world became much clearer to him. Futian sensed that this seemingly illusory world was actually quite real. The energy of the Great Path was perfect, and it really seemed to be a world set up by the ancient gods. The villagers believed that only people who were blessed by gods could acquire cultivation opportunities here. Futian supposed that it was because the blessed ones were compatible with the Great Path here. That was why they could see some of the scenes of the Great Path and gain cultivation opportunities from those. Common folks couldn't sense anything happening here because their minds were not matched with the Great Path. Nevertheless, why did this world only appear every 4 years on the day of sacrificial rites named by the villagers? This world would materialize every 4 years on the day of sacrificial rites, cover the village, and bring some people into the space world. Futian looked around and said, "Let me go up and have a look." Then he soared into the sky and kept heading upward until he was high above this world. His bright eyes looked down as though he was trying to fathom the mystery of this world. Chapter 2103, The 4 Families. Chapter 2103, The 4 Families. Old Ma looked at Muyun Long and said, "You're throwing out my guests in my house. Isn't that inappropriate?" Muyun Long darted Old Ma a disdainful look and said, "Old Ma, I'm already saving your face by not doing it myself. This man attacked my son in the relic of the ancestors of 4 Corner Village. How audacious! That's why the Muyun family decides to banish him and his friends on behalf of 4 Corner Village. If that's the case, please do me a favor and banish the people standing behind you too. They wanted to attack my son in the relic of the ancestors of 4 Corner Village. How audacious! I'm sure the Muyun family is impartial and fair-minded. Why don't you banish them as well and come to talk to me about how your son tried to keep my son from gaining his awakening?" Blind Tai, who was sitting in silence before, suddenly chimed in at this moment. Needless to say, he was referring to the 3 cultivators from the Nanhai family. Nanhai Qing shot Blind Tai a glance. Of course, he had heard about Blind Tai and how he stirred up a storm in the outer realms back in the days. Even so, how dare he expel members of the Nanhai family? Blind Tai was indeed hubristic as usual. He didn't know to restrain himself even after he lost his sight. Muyun Long remained calm and looked at Blind Tai. He said, "It was merely a joke between 2 teenage boys, not a real fight. Why did you take it to heart? On the other hand, this outsider undeniably assaulted my son today. This is unforgivable. Old Ma, if you insist on defending your guest and keeping him here, don't blame me for starting a fight." While speaking, Muyun Long released wisps of energy from his body to show off his formidable power. It turned out that Muyun Long was also an extraordinary cultivator and had ventured into the world in his younger days. He then returned to the village to hide from his enemies and promised the master that he wouldn't go out again. After that, he lived in the village, and his son, Muyun Long, later left the village and killed his old enemies for him. Muyun Long had been outside and was well aware of the excitement and adventures out there. Needless to say, he wasn't content with staying in the village. For years he had been focusing on raising and training Muyun Shu, his youngest son. In the meantime, he was quite ambitious and allied within the village. Now that 4 Corner Village had transformed, he sensed that the opportunity he was waiting for was finally here. He knew that 4 Corner Village was a famed place of miracles in the Shangqing domain, and he believed that the master was wrong about keeping villagers from leaving this small piece of land. He was not the only villager who was unwilling to be trapped in Four Corner Village. Many people were imprisoned here and wasted their potential. It was quite a shame. Shi Kuei of the Shi family was a burly man with intimidating muscles. He looked as if he had infinite strength. Gu Huai of the Gu family was tall and slender. He was dressed in black and had a gloomy and sinister look which gave off a danger. Fang Gai of the Fang family was a man wearing extravagant clothes. Yi Futian had already met him when his grandson Fang Xian had a short encounter with little Ling when Yi Futian arrived at the village. Everyone seems to be in a leisurely mood. The village just experienced dramatic change, yet somehow you all have time to visit my humble home, Old Ma said slowly. Since the two worlds have merged and stabilized, everyone in the village will be able to have a chance to cultivate in the future. We don't have to rush into action now. I came over to have a look when I heard about the dispute here, Fang Gai said with a smile. If that's the case, what do you think of Mu Yunlong's decision? Blind Tai asked in a cold tone. The crowd watched them in silence. Fang Gai cracked a smile and said, "Of course. It's not right." Stunned, many people stared at Fang Gai in confusion. Even Mu Yunlong turned around slowly and focused his gaze on Fang Gai. He narrowed his eyes slightly with displeasure. Fang Gai was never at odds with Mu Yunlong in the past. He had always been a yes man, and his son was cultivating outside of the village. However, he opposed Mu Yunlong in public. What did he mean? Fang Gai, what's not right? Mu Yunlong questioned him in a forceful voice. Old Ma and Blind Tai have explained it clearly. Mu Yunshu was the one who tried to pick a fight with Tai Tu. Mu Yunshu has always been a bully. We all live in the same village, and it's not a big deal to exercise some forbearance on usual occasions. But he is not a child anymore. Doesn't he understand that he shouldn't interrupt his peer during the awakening? On top of that, you use it as an excuse to expel other people's guests. That's out of line. Fang Gai replied with a smile. The tension in the yard was almost palpable. Fang Gai's answer might be a little too frank and straightforward. He clearly targeted Mu Yunshu and reprimanded him harshly. The villagers all felt quite strange. How was this the same Fang Gai who was always easygoing and smiley? Why did he change all of a sudden? Moreover, he was firing at the Mu Yun family, which was even more unexpected. Nonetheless, he was telling the truth. Everyone who had studied in the private school knew that Mu Yunshu was a bully who enjoyed pushing around other people. He certainly had the ability to do so as well. His parents turned a blind eye to his insolent behaviors because of his exceptional talents. Fang Xin, look how righteous your grandpa is, Mu Yunshu said to Fang Xin, his eyes gleaming with threatening menace. My grandpa is not wrong. You are at fault here. Why did you come to cause trouble for little Ling's family? Fang Xiuan retorted in an irritated tone. The teenage boys quarreled just like the elders did. Very well. Mu Yunlong spat out two words and didn't continue to argue. Then, he looked at Shi Kuei and Gu Huai and asked, "What do you two think?" Mu Yunlong felt very assured since the Mu Yun family was the strongest and the most influential one among the four. Much to his surprise, Fang Gai challenged his decision right away. Outsiders attacking villagers is unforgivable. I agree to expel them from the village, Gu Huai of the Gu family said in a low voice. The Mu Yun family and the Gu family both agreed to expel Yi Futian, while Fang Gai opposed. Right now, the Shi family was the only one left. Shi Kuei could decide if Yi Futian could stay in the village. Yi Futian had been sitting in silence without moving. These people didn't know what the transformation meant for Four Corner Village. Otherwise, they wouldn't waste time squabbling here. I don't think it's appropriate, said Shi Kuei. If we were to banish him, we should kick out the people who tried to attack Tai Tu as well. Then we can discuss what happened between Mu Yunshu and Tai Tu. Shi Kuei believed that the conflict between Tai Tu and Mu Yunshu was an internal affair. They should treat everyone equally if they decided to banish the outsiders for starting a fight. Therefore, two principals said yes, while two said no. Mu Yunlong's face grew grim. He didn't expect Shi Kuei and Fang Gai to oppose him. Should we ask the master? A villager in the crowd asked quietly. They usually sought advice from the master when they couldn't make a decision. Everyone in the village trusted the master's judgment. However, Muyun Long had a different idea in mind. He always thought that the villagers relied on the master too much, and it was time for a change. Our ancestors manifested themselves, and the village just went through an extreme transformation. There will be more and more cultivators in Four Corner Village, and things will become even trickier. Master, shouldn't we change our approach accordingly? Muyun Long didn't ask the master about Yi Futian or the incident between Tai Tu and Muyun Shu. Instead, he wanted to negotiate about the future of Four Corner Village. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2104, Seeking a Change. Chapter 2104, Seeking a Change. Even though Muyun Long was not even close to the private school, no one doubted that the master could hear his question. The master was omnipotent in Four Corner Village. In the past, he chose to stay in the private school and devote himself to teaching the youngsters how to cultivate. He intended not to intervene in the affairs of Four Corner Village. But now Muyun Long specially asked him if Four Corner Village should adopt a new approach. What kind of change do you want? As expected, the master's voice penetrated through the void and answered Muyun Long's question with another question. Muyun Long's words clearly conveyed the impression that he already had a plan in mind to change Four Corner Village. Master, you said before that everyone in the village would be able to cultivate in the future. Is that true? Muyun Long asked. Yes, the master replied. All the villagers will be able to cultivate, but they may reach different levels in the end, just like everyone in the outer realms. I understand, Muyun Long nodded and said. But Four Corner Village is blessed by the spirits of our ancestors. More and more extraordinary cultivators will be raised here in the future now that the ancestors have manifested themselves. I believe this to be an opportunity. Our village has brought up plenty of remarkable cultivators, yet we are still isolated and cut off from the world. The villagers have no idea of the scene of bustling activities out there. They can only hear a word or two from the people who had been outside. This is very unfair to the villagers. Since we're given the chance to cultivate now, shouldn't we officially open ourselves up and build a bridge to connect with the outside world? Four Corner Village should allow people to come and go at will and no longer be sequestered. While speaking, Muyun Long scanned the crowd around him and said, "Folks, what do you all think?" That's right. A lot of people nodded in agreement. Someone gazed into the distance and said, Master, Muyun Long has a point. It doesn't matter for old guys like us who are halfway to the grave already. But our children are still young. Why should we confine them in this small village when they have a chance to broaden their horizons outside? Exactly. I also heard that cultivators have a much longer life expectancy and won't experience aging and illness the same way we do. People who comprehended the Great Path might even live forever. Many people had thought about this, let alone the ones who were already on Muyun Long's side. Although the master had unchallenged authority in the village, he was a mysterious man who had lived for an extremely long time. No one even knew which generation he was from. Because the master usually stayed out of the daily affairs and Muyun Long had managed Four Corner Village for many years, Muyun Long had a great influence on many villagers. These villagers were all of the same mind. I also agree with Muyun Long's idea, said Gu Huai. The head of the Gu family seemed to be in harmony with Muyun Long all the time. At this point, the subject of the discussion had shifted away from Yi Futian, which was exactly one of Muyun Long's intents. Four Corner Village had the potential to gain foremost authority as soon as it opened up to the outer realms. At that time, Muyun Long would have a chance to fully control the village. His ambition had grown outside of the village a long time ago. Dealing with Yi Futian and Old Ma would be as easy as pie when he reigned over Four Corner Village. As for now, he needed to chip away the master's prestige and authority first. In the meantime, he was also curious to see what the master was capable of. The master was so mysterious and secretive that no one knew anything about him. The crowd fell into a moment of silence after a heated discussion. The master spoke again moments later. What do others think? Mu Yunlong's argument was reasonable. But our four-corner village only exists because of the master's protection. This is eventually the master's decision, Fang Gai said. Mu Yunlong immediately shot him a cold glance upon hearing him. This be asterisk starred. Fang Gai's response was quite artful. Yi Futian also glanced at Fang Gai, who was indeed a crafty person. Fang Gai not only expressed his opinion but also reconfirmed the master's absolute authority. He obviously didn't believe that Mu Yunlong could challenge the master's position in Four Corner Village. Both the older and the younger generations of the Mu Yun family had been quite capable and domineering. Besides Mu Yunlong, Mu Yunlan and Mu Yunshu possessed great talents as well. Mu Yunlan, in particular, enjoyed a very high status in the outer realms. It was not surprising that Mu Yunlong was eager to extend his influence further. I will listen to the master too, Shi Kuei of the Shi family said. It's up to the master, other villagers echoed in quick succession and soon reached a consensus. They held no less sway than Mu Yunlong's followers. Mu Yunlong's expression changed a little. But he understood that people's reaction was normal since the master was revered by the villagers for a long time. Most people in the village had their own minds and agenda. More and more villagers would grow disgruntled with the master if he rejected Mu Yunlong's suggestion. Soon, everyone quieted down, waiting for the master's response. At this moment, the master's voice rang out again. All right. The master's reply took Mu Yunlong by surprise. He clearly didn't expect that the master would agree, and he wasn't the only one shocked by this decision. After all, Four Corner Village had been cut off from the world for countless years. They always followed the rules and were used to being secluded. Even though some were eager to go out and see the world, they still had mixed feelings when the master said, all right. I didn't pick on her, Fang Xiuan defended himself with frustration. Fang Gai flicked Fang Xiuan on his forehead for talking back. Little Ling hurried to say, Grandpa Fang Xiuan really didn't pick on me. That's good. Ask Fang Xiuan to play with you more in the future. Fang Gai laughed. Meanwhile, another boy was glaring at him at the moment. Fang Gai noticed Tai Tu's fierce stare and pointed at him. Tai Tu, you should join them too so you won't be bullied as well. I won't be bullied, Tai Tu raised his chin and said. Huh, who else was bullied that day by the boy from the Mu Yun family? Fang Gai joked. My dad didn't allow me to fight back. I'm not afraid of him at all, said Tai Tu. He jerked his head up and said with indignation. Other people couldn't help but laugh. Yi Futian darted a glance at Fang Gai. He was impressed by how quickly Fang Gai acquainted with Little Ling and Tai Tu. The atmosphere became cordial and relaxed at once as if they had always been good friends. Quit teasing him. Everyone else is out there searching for cultivation opportunities. Why didn't you go? Old Ma asked Fang Gai. The cultivation opportunities are predestined. Since the ancestors manifested themselves, I believe everything is part of a plan. This is not something that can be forced. It all depends on luck, Fang Gai said. My family is not lucky enough. I need to let my grandson absorb some good fortune here. Why are you looking for good fortune in my house? Old Ma said with a scowl on his face. Fang Gai looked at Old Ma with his squinting eyes. He was certain that Old Ma was an old fox trying to hide his good fortune. From what he could see, Old Ma's home was the luckiest place in the entire Four Corner Village. Old Ma, we have known each other for many years. Why are you so cagey around me? Fang Gai gazed at Old Ma and asked, Mu Yunlong and I are not the same kind of people, are we? Who knows? Old Ma said. You old be asterisk starred, Fang Gai cursed in a low voice. What an ingrate. I shouldn't have helped you just now. Skip the nonsense. Just tell me what you want to do. They grew up in the same village and were around the same age. Even Mu Yunlong was a whole generation younger than them. Therefore, they knew each other very well. Mu Yunlong is getting more and more outrageous. For Corner Village might be led astray if he remained in power. No one knows what would happen. I will side with you no matter what. Tai Tu basically inherited the divine technique and should have a say, according to the master. Either way, we should make the village our priority no matter what ulterior motive I may have. Fang Gai said, since you two don't like me here, I won't overstay my welcome." Then he stood up and left with Fong Xiuan. The rest of the people watched them going away. Little Ling sneaked a peek at old Ma and said quietly, "Grandpa Fong is a good man." Although Fong Gai and Fong Xiuan enjoyed a high status in the village, they had never pushed anyone around. They liked to joke around but never with any malicious intent. "I know, but this old fox is hatching his secret plot." Old Ma shot a glance at Yi Futian. Fong Gai didn't say a word to Yi Futian from start to finish. But did he really come here only to visit old Ma and blind Tai? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.